Throughout history, there have been people who have committed some of the most heinous crimes fathomable. For those crimes, they have been convicted and sentenced to death. Welcome to Death Row Executions, where we take a look into the lives of society's worst offenders. And now, your host, Air.
It's hard knowing that my sister was taken in such a tragic way.
I don't know what kind of evil resides in you, Lonnie David Franklin, but you have touched so many lives and hurt so many people.
I just want to ask you, do you know why you're here?
No, I don't.
Do you have any idea why you're here?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, we're working on an investigation, and there's a warrant for arrest, charging a count of murder.
Count of murder.
Yes, sir.
Hello everyone, today's story is on serial killer Lonnie Franklin Jr., who was also known as the Grim Sleeper because he took a break from killing from the years 1988 to 2002. In the mid-1980s, Los Angeles had a lot of issues on their hands, ranging from drugs to crime and serial killers on the loose. While Lonnie was able to kill under the radar, LAPD was looking for the man responsible for the Strawberry murders. There were quite a few copycat killers who killed at least one victim each, in order to pretend like they were the culprits. There was Louis Crane, Michael Hughes, Daniel Lee Siebert, Chester Turner, and Ivan Hill. Police believe that the man in charge of the Strawberry murders was Detective Ricky Ross after being found with drugs, a working woman in his car, and a semi-automatic pistol. Ballistics reports concluded that Ricky Ross's gun was not used in any of the murders, and the murders remained unsolved. More victims were popping up who had been shot with the same gun wounds, but it would take cops nearly 2 decades to find out that Lonnie Franklin Jr. was their man. Lonnie David Franklin Jr. was born on August 30th, 1952 in South Central Los Angeles. Growing up, he was surrounded by drugs, streetwalkers, gang members, churchgoers, and criminals. Lonnie decided to become a petty thief, but everyone in his neighborhood ignored his crimes and considered him to be a decent guy because he would be able to steal a television, for example, and sell it to them for half the price of what it was worth. He also had a large supply of stolen car parts behind his greenhouse, but everyone stuck to the don't ask, don't tell motto. In April of 1974, and now 21 years old, Lonnie decided to enlist in the United States Army, and after enlisting, he was stationed in Germany. It is not uncommon for young men to escape bad environments or low-income households by joining the Army. It is also not uncommon for young men who have gotten into a lot of trouble in school to choose the Army as an outlet. Unfortunately, the Army for Lonnie was no different than home life back in South Central Los Angeles. There were drugs, women who worked the streets, and fellow soldiers who were criminals just like him. Lonnie learned no discipline as a private, and one day on April 17, 1974, he and 2 of his soldier criminal friends noticed a woman who was walking towards the train station at about midnight. The men asked her for directions, and after being helped by the innocent woman, they offered her a ride home, to which the woman accepted. As soon as she got in the car, she was assaulted and taken to a remote location. After being sexually assaulted and the men performing a train on her, they then decided to take pictures of her. After pictures were taken, they casually drove her back home like nothing happened. The woman was smart enough to pretend to be interested in the men and specifically asked Lonnie for his number. Not thinking anything of it, Lonnie gave the woman his number. The woman did end up calling him, but it was a setup. She had contacted the authorities, and when Lonnie went to a spot they were supposed to meet up at, he was greeted by police who arrested him. Lonnie was charged, tried, and convicted. He was sentenced to 40 months in prison, but he was released early after serving only less than a year in prison. Now, Lonnie was back to his old home in Los Angeles, California. He was able to get a job as a sanitation worker, and he quickly learned the city's layouts. He was familiar with many alleyways, landfills, and dumpsters. With his victim in Germany on his mind, Lonnie felt the need to take his crimes a step further. He would assault women and photograph them. He was targeting poor black women who were addicted to crack and or working the streets. Although Lonnie is presumed to have killed a woman by the name of Sharon Alicia Dismuke on January 15, 1984, his first documented kill that he would later be convicted for came around August 10, 1984.
This young lady, Deborah Jackson.
Lonnie preyed on 29-year-old Deborah Jackson. After she was sexually assaulted, Lonnie shot her 3 times and then dumped her in a random alley he was familiar with. Deborah's body was found on August 10, 1984, and police initially believed that Deborah's death was drug-related. Lonnie was able to get away with Deborah's death and focus on his life. The following year, he married a woman named Sylvia, and the couple had 2 children together. Lonnie continued being well-liked by neighbors, co-workers, and random people who entered his life. He was very friendly and easy to talk to. Neighbors saw him spend a lot of time working on cars in his driveway and never knew the dark and twisted thoughts he had that he was making a reality.
This young lady, her name is Henrietta Wright. Go ahead, take a close look.
No recollection at all.
No recollection, or you just don't?
I don't know her. But ugly, I don't know her.
What?
But ugly, I don't know her. Sorry, I don't know her.
In August of 1986, 34-year-old Henrietta Wright's body was found under a discarded mattress. A couple of days later, on August 14th, a man named Thomas Steele was found dead. Police would later suspect that Thomas discovered that Lonnie was the Grim Sleeper, or he was a friend of a victim that Lonnie had killed, but to date, Lonnie has never been charged with Thomas's murder. A year after the deaths of Henrietta and Thomas, in 1987, Lonnie had killed 23-year-old Barbara Ware and 26-year-olds Bernita Sparks and Mary Lowe.
This young lady here. Her name is Barbara Ware. Never saw her before. Know nothing about it.
Nothing about her.
Barbara's body was found on January 10, 1987 in central Alameda.
This young lady here, her name is Bernita Sparks.
Wow, she look heavy set.
Why?
No, I just said she look fat. No, I don't know.
Bernita Sparks was found in a trash bin on April 15, 1987 in Gramercy Park.
This young lady here, Mary Lowe was her name.
No, I don't know her. She looked like Rialto, one of my wife's friends.
And Mary Lowe was also found at Gramercy Park, but her body wasn't discovered until November 1, 1987. The following year, in 1988, Lonnie would go on to kill 3 more women, although he attempted to make it to 4.
This young lady, Lucretia Jefferson.
No. I don't know her.
22-year-old Lashrika was found on January 30th, 1988 in Westmont. 28-year-old Inez Warren was found on August 15th, 1988 in Gramercy Park, but to date, he has not been convicted of her murder.
In 1988, this young lady, Alicia Alexander. Was found. And again, it's all linked to you.
On September 11th, 1988, 18-year-old Alicia Alexander's body was found in Vermont Square, Los Angeles. All of these women were sexually assaulted and killed with a .25 caliber handgun. Lonnie's DNA was found on all of the women as well, but since his DNA had never been registered in the system, police did not know who the killer was. They knew they had a serial killer on their hands, but they chose to keep things quiet in the hopes that the killer would not flee to a different state. The 4th victim Lonnie tried killing in 1988 was Enietra Margette Washington. On November 20th, 1988, 30-year-old Enietra was walking to her friend's house in Gramercy Park when Lonnie pulled up beside her in his orange Ford Pinto. He offered Enietra a ride, but she refused. Lonnie kept driving alongside her, requesting she get in the car, but Enietra kept refusing. Angered, Lonnie, who was still a married man by the way, said to Enietra, "That's what's wrong with you black women. People can't be nice to you." Lonnie asked her to get in the car again, and feeling like he would never leave her alone, Enietra finally agreed to get in. Once inside, Lonnie pulled out a handgun and pointed it right at her chest. Before she was able to even get a word out, Lonnie fired. Shocked that she had just been shot, she asked Lonnie why he shot her. He replied by saying, "Because you disrespected me." Enietra was then sexually assaulted. Lonnie took a picture of her and then pushed her out of the car, assuming she was dead or would die. Little to Lonnie's surprise, Enietra was still clinging to life, and when he drove off, she mustered up enough strength to crawl and look for help. Authorities arrived and she was transported to the hospital. Doctors were able to remove the bullet that was lodged in Enietra's chest, and ballistic results concluded that it was fired from the same gun that had killed previous victims in the area. After healing from her wounds, Enietra was able to give authorities a description of what the attacker looked like, and a police sketch artist was able to produce a composite sketch. Who knows if Lonnie found out about Enietra surviving and got spooked, but serial killer Lonnie took a 14-year hiatus from his killing. It wasn't until March 19, 2002, when police found Princess Bartholomew's body in Inglewood, California, and connected DNA found on her to DNA found on other victims.
2002, this young lady was found. Do you recognize her?
No, I don't.
Princess.
I don't.
Never seen her before?
No.
2 years before that, though, in December of 2000, Lonnie is presumed to have killed 43-year-old Georgia May in South Park, Los Angeles. To date, Lonnie hasn't been charged for killing Georgia, even after evidence was presented linking him to her murder. That is why documents state that he took a 14-year hiatus and not a 12-year hiatus. On July 11, 2003, 35-year-old Valerie McCorvey's body was found in Westmont. Lonnie changed his typical MO when he killed Princess and Valerie because they were not killed with a .25 caliber handgun. That changed in 2007 when he reverted back to his old ways of killing his victims. On January 1, 2007, 25-year-old Janisha Lavette Peters' body was found in Gramercy Park, and she was shot by a .25 caliber pistol.
No, I don't.
I've never seen that girl before.
No, I haven't.
Who was that? Was that Peters?
Yes.
All right.
No, I haven't.
DNA samples were taken from Janisha's body, and the same DNA that was found from previous victims was also found on her. Despite the Los Angeles Police Department knowing they had a serial killer in their midst, a task force to solve the murders was not set up until 2007, when Los Angeles Police Commissioner Bill Bratton decided to start one. After starting the task force, he made an appearance during a press conference, and the public was finally made aware that Janisha's murder was linked to 10 other murders dating all the way back to 1985. The following year, in 2008, journalist Christine Pelisek wrote a piece called Grim Sleeper Returns. He's murdering Angelenos as cops hunt his DNA. Christine was the first person to give the unknown serial killer the nickname Grim Sleeper. In Christine's article, though, she claimed that Police Commissioner Bratton was not interested in the murders because they all happened in low-income areas with female minority victims. Christine was quoted writing, "Nobody with any pool, no homeowners association, no local chamber of commerce was demanding answers to 10 murders by the same guy in a poor section of town." With the task force doing their best to solve the murders, evidence was stacking against Lonnie. There was a police composite, ballistics from the weapon he used, and DNA found at each and every crime scene. Technology for DNA testing, though, was far more sophisticated when the task force was on the case versus back in 1984 when he killed his first victim. Authorities decided to run the Grim Sleeper's DNA in the state's felon database. Police did not get a complete match, but they got a partial match. Surprisingly, Lonnie's older son, Christopher Franklin, had DNA that was entered into the database because he was arrested that same year in 2008 on felony weapons and drug charges. In more than a decade, police were closer to catching their suspect than ever. They knew the killer was related to Christopher. Now, looking at close relatives of Christopher's, police decided to take a closer look into his father, Lonnie Franklin Jr. They couldn't just go up to him and ask him for his DNA, so they planned on following him to a birthday party in downtown Los Angeles. In the undercover stint, police officers posed as employees. One officer posed as a busboy, so after the party was done eating, he collected Lonnie's fork, cups, napkins, and a partially eaten slice of pizza. Police had what they needed, and they ran the DNA found on the items they retrieved from the restaurant to the DNA found on the 10 victims. It was a match, and police now had the evidence to make an arrest. Lonnie was arrested on July 7, 2010, and charged with 10 counts of murder. Immediately after being arrested, police searched his home. They found a gun, and ballistics concluded it was the same gun used to kill his victims. They also discovered hundreds of photos of unidentified women. Some were in uncompromising positions. They looked like they had been assaulted or forced to pose. Some, on the other hand, looked unconscious or dead. Although hundreds of images were found, police were able to spot the 10 victims they knew were linked to Lonnie in his collection. Authorities now believed Lonnie never took a hiatus in killing and that he had many more victims they suspected. Police also suspected that before his very last kill, he killed 2 women whose bodies were never found, Ayala Marshall and Rolenia Maurice. Ayala was last seen in February of 2005. Her school ID card was found in Lonnie's garage, but since there was a lack of evidence, detectives could not charge him for her murder. As for Rolenia, she was last seen on September 5, 2006 by her family and friends. Her driver's license, along with 2 inappropriate images of her, were also found in Lonnie's garage. There was not enough evidence to charge Lonnie for her disappearance or murder. Police Chief Charlie Beck was quoted saying, "We certainly don't believe we are so lucky or so good to know all of his crimes. We need the public's help." With that, about 180 images that were found in Lonnie's garage were released to the public so that the community would be able to identify some of the women. After years of being in custody awaiting his trial, Lonnie's trial finally began in February of 2016. There were 3 months of testimony and evidence was stacked against Lonnie. Prosecutors painted Lonnie as a former corporal in the Army who began his sexual assaults early in life. A prosecutor, Beth Silverman, told the jury, "These crimes were about power and control. It's clear the defendant got pleasure from killing these women because that's how they all ended up. He definitely wanted to degrade these women by dumping their bodies like trash. He got off on that too, and that is why he did it over and over. It gave him gratification." To support her opinions, prosecutors brought Lonnie's friend Ray Davis to the stand. Ray testified that Lonnie's encounters with women were always a topic of conversation. Lonnie showed Ray many photos, and Lonnie would joke that he had names for all of the women in the photos depending on what their breasts looked like. He also claimed that Lonnie never smoked weed, but he always kept a stash for his quote-unquote girlfriends. Prosecutors also brought up how they were able to find a Polaroid of his surviving victim Enietra in his garage. Enietra was brave enough to testify against Lonnie during his trial. On May 5, 2016, the jury found Lonnie guilty of 10 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. On August 10, 2016, Lonnie Franklin was sentenced to death.
It is the judgment and sentence of this court that you shall suffer the death penalty. All of these people have been suffering and will continue to suffer, but hopefully, as many of them said, they feel they're going to receive some peace, and I hope that you are able to leave here with some peace today.
Lonnie's surviving victim, Enietra, spoke during the victim's impact statement, and she was quoted saying, "You're truly a piece of evil. You're a Satan representative. You're right up there with Manson." Lonnie was sent to death row at San Quentin Prison. In 2019, however, California Governor Gavin Newsom announced that he was halting the executions for all of California's 700-plus death row inmates for as long as he was governor. Lonnie believed he was a saved man and would never be executed. The following year, though, correctional officers went into a cell and they discovered him unresponsive with no pulse. Lonnie had died in his cell. He died of natural causes on March 28, 2020, at the age of 67. Barbara, the mother of one of his victims, was quoted saying, "I won't say I'm pleased he died, but at the end, there was justice for all the bad things he did in his life. We can now be at peace." Thank you all for watching another episode of Death Row Executions. Let me know what you guys think of this story in the comments below.